I'm thrilled to be here today with Jean Leggett, a truly remarkable games professional. In addition to having a thriving career in comedy, public speaking, and coaching, she runs One More Story Games with her partner Blair. They're a multiple award-winning studio with a real focus on narrative games. They have a feminist ethos, and Jean does the biz dev, strategy, and the public face of the company. It's not been an easy story, but the quality and the commitment to phenomenal games puts them in an awesome position. They're currently working on a really interesting licensing deal with Charlene Harris and the Lily Bard series, focusing on sexual trauma survivor with PTSD who is also solving crimes. It's a super creative, and we can't wait to dive in to finding out more. Thanks for being here, Jean.
Thank you so much for having me, Simon. I'm excited and thrilled to share our story and be of service to other game devs that are listening.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. That's a great motivation. Thank you. Before we go into your studio and, of course, working with your husband, which, you know, from a personal perspective, that's interesting to me. How did you get into games in the first place?
Well, and this is where, you know, I've been joined at the hip with my husband for quite a long time. I got into games through Blair. So Blair and I have been together for coming up on 23.5 years. And which is like forever and a day, right? And so we've been together for a really long time. I was doing my own thing. Blair was really wanting to get into the game space. So he started working at EA in 2001. He worked there for 8 years. We then moved from Canada, from Vancouver down to San Francisco, and then Dallas to work for Zynga. And so really he was in that game space for a really long time. When he had a near-death experience in 2012, we made the decision, yes, you know, one of those like life forks in the road moments. And we made the decision not to go back to Vancouver because it is the most expensive city in Canada to live. And we didn't know what we were going to do. So we came back to his hometown, which is about an hour north of Toronto. And I said, why don't you do the thing that you love? And I will do the thing that I love. And if at the end of the year, if we're out of money, we'll go get the job thing, right? We didn't have a lot of debt at the time. And like, why not? We don't have children. We don't have a mortgage. We don't have pets. The only risk is to ourselves. And we know we're highly employable people. So yeah, I often call myself the evangelist to Blair's visionary. And maybe that's not quite fair to my contributions to the company, but I love talking about this thing that he's created. And so
Sorry, just to interject, what's Blair's skill set?
Oh, okay. So Blair has multiple degrees. One is in computing science, one is in philosophy, English, and political theory. So from a world building perspective, he's been the tools guy at EA and Zynga for, you know, well over a decade. And he wanted to build Story Stylus, which is our proprietary narrative engine, to help people who don't know how to code make games. And for me, it just became pretty obvious that he was great at the hacking, but I'm like really great at the hustle. And I thought, you know, yes, I'm loving doing the stand-up comedy and the public speaking and the personal development workshops, but this company has huge potential. So why not just put that on the back burner and come and help raise some money and see what we could do with OMSG.
Oh, thank you. I mean, please carry on with the, it's really inspiring actually already.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, really. And you've got to follow your dream. It's fantastic.
I've had a lot of ahas over the course of the last 6 years because we're coming up on our 6-year anniversary of the company, which is surreal to me. And, you know, one of the things that I didn't realize until I went to my first GDC in 2018 is how most game devs on the indie scene don't actually get to work on their dreams full time, that it's an absolute privilege to do that. The dirty little secret in games is that most people have full-time jobs and then they work on games on the side. And that's that should seem obvious, but we don't talk about it in our social media. And so people have this unrealistic expectation that they can quit their job and do what they love. And it's hard. It is absolutely hard. I could tell you more of the harrowing experiences that we've had financially. Um, we've been very fortunate. We've raised over $500,000 Canadian from our friends. And when I give the talk of our studio, I refer to our friends as our barn raisers. Are you familiar with barn raisers, Simon?
No, I haven't heard that.
That term?
Term.
It is, so the Amish, which is a particular branch of religion faith, or sorry, Christian faith,
Yes.
The Amish will stop what they're doing and they'll all gather together and they will erect a barn in one day, 1 or 2 days. The community will come together and they will get that thing done. And so I often refer to my core people in my circle as my barn raisers. Like, they have dropped everything. They have housed us, fed us, invested in us, believed in us. One of the more particularly challenging experiences that we had over the last 6 years was earlier this year, because there was a funding gap. We were homeless for 2 months, which, yeah. And I was like, well, I can't tell the world that we're homeless because people's perspectives and judgments will pop up. So I turned it into a marketing opportunity, as I do. It even had its own hashtag, Stories C2C. And we did a 2-month jaunt of couch surfing across Eastern Canada and the United States with speaking engagements. And then afterwards, when we got settled in, I was like, and by the way, we were homeless. So, don't think that we always have our things together. Sometimes there's funding gaps. And the more indie devs that I talk to that are dealing with larger studios, the more I hear that that's not terribly uncommon.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, my own story, I never had a job. I was young, had no responsibility. I thought I'm going to follow my dreams. And we took $30,000 that I could get from my uncle and from, a couple of good friends. And we used that to get a licensing deal. And we had one game deal and we built the studio from there into a $3 million studio.
Wow.
But we started out in my bedroom. So the mattress would be leaned up against the wall during the day, night in amongst the kit,
Yeah.
So that's an incredible story. And wow, I mean, I've got my questions here. They've kind of gone out the window already. So I mean, that's fascinating. So do you now have to spend like a portion of the time working on just fundraising?
No. So what the big aha that we had this year was, listen, so in the course of developing the game engine, Story Stylus, which we started prototyping and we built the engine and the technology 6 years ago. And unfortunately, we built it on technology that is now being going out the window. So we built it on Silverlight to Flash. I get so much flack for that. I'm like, dudes, listen, this thing worked. We picked Betamax over VHS. For those of you old enough to know the analogy, nothing wrong with Betamax. It's just VHS won the domination. And so we've been slow to make that transition over to a Unity plugin, which is what we're going to be working on for 2020. And so we've been building this technology, plus building games, plus running summer camps, plus raising money. And when you look at the scope of everything that we've accomplished in 6 years, I can understand why people think we're busy people. And like, we're going to be doing summer camps again this summer because we are both now teaching at Sheridan College, which is the top game design program in Canada. Blair is teaching introductory to coding to first years in their Bachelor Game Design program. He's also teaching postgraduate students, as am I. And while teaching full-time for him really takes him away from engine development, you know what? After 7 years of not having a regular paycheck, it's really sweet. So it means that we can't do game dev full-time. And that's the hard piece of it, right? I have more flexibility, and the game that we're working on that we've kind of, I wouldn't say we've banked everything on, but the Charlene Harris project that you were talking about there, it's the thing that drives me. And I really feel like it's an important game to get out there. I would love to finish it in a reasonable amount of time, push it out there, and to show people what we're really made out of. But I also know that having done 2 years of summer camps with kids, man, I don't even like children. I always say no pets, no plants, no children. If it can't feed itself, it can't live in the house. That's the comic in me.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
I
you
feel the
know,
same. I feel the same about children. I've got 3.
well, and the funny thing is, I mean, I was privileged enough to do a TEDx talk a couple of years ago. And I said, I don't understand why people would trust a software engineer and a stand-up comedian to take their kids for a week, right? But doing the camps really changed our personal philosophies. Like, we've always been the kind of community builders, but doing the camps really fundamentally cemented for us that we want to be doing at least 20% community service, whether that's paid teaching or paid mentoring or unpaid teaching and unpaid mentoring. But we want to make sure that a portion of our time is allocated to inspiring the next generation of storytellers. So it's the ed tech portion has become a bigger portion of our company than we expected from 5 years ago.
Right. Yes, of course. And it's an interesting market. I did a lot of work for Leapfrog, and it's a great challenge to try, and our job was to sort of weave in curriculum stuff into to make it more interesting to learn. And the summer camps that you're doing, are they what do you teach there?
Well, we teach them how to take story ideas and turn them into interactive games. So right now there's a game on our website that that an 11-year-old girl named Kira, she was 11 3 years ago. So she created a game within 1 week of our camp, and you play as Barack or Michelle Obama, ready for this, to defeat Trumpy Cat. So
fantastic. A worthwhile cause as well.
Well, and you get to push Trumpy Cat into a big cat void. She wrote it during the summer election of 2016. Sadly, he did not, perish in that cat void. And if you meet Hillary Cat, you also die. If you choose to go with Hillary Cat, you will die. Like, I wouldn't have written it that way, but it's funny. I was talking to somebody in another country about possibly doing some educational stuff with them. And they're like, well, I don't think I would have let a child write a political game. I said, we don't limit the kids' ideas. When they come into our camps, we just say, all right, what do you want to do? And so we teach them the difference between linear and interactive storytelling. We get them to do flowcharts of their story ideas. They then write out their story ideas. Some of them do their own art. They do the writing of the characters. They do character conversations, inventory items, combining items, exploring essentially a 5-room dungeon. And by the end of the week, they have this playable game. And
sounds fantastic. It's definitely limited to children, is it?
Well, and I didn't realize, I think Blair and I both didn't realize that what these kids had accomplished within the 18 hours that we get them to work in Story Stylist is how remarkable the end product was for that period of time. So we would have teachers and we would have parents come in and say, what have you done? Like, what have you done to our children that they get home and all they want to do is work on their game? And I've never seen them so motivated. And I just thought, oh, well, it's just because they're making games. It's because they're taking ownership of their own story, right? So when I think about the impact that we want to have in the world, it's great that aspiring game developers may use our engine. But if you ask me what I'm really passionate about, it's re-engineering literacy through games. So I want to bring writers who are typically writing short stories, novellas, novelettes. I want to give them the tools and the education so that they can bring great stories into interactive storytelling, because there's not easy to use tools out there for people who aren't tech savvy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that sounds like a really lot of fun, you know. Um, is that available yet to writers?
Absolutely. So we've been in open beta for a couple of years, and we have some YouTube tutorials, and people are able to make basic games based on those tutorials alone. And with this, I'm teaching right now stories, quests, and missions at Sheridan. And I'm going to be repurposing the content that I've been developing from my course and doing an online, like a structured online course for writers who have never written for games before. And basically it will be the how-to to make games in Story Stylist, which I'm super, super excited about because, we've been waiting for a long time to make formal curriculum for the engine. And now the time is now, 2020. It's an exciting time. I'm pumped.
Yeah, gosh, it sounds like a lovely product, actually. I mean, just the training tool alone is a lovely product.
Thank you.
And a great way to sort of productize something that's of real value to the games community as well, and the next generation. Thanks, God, it's fascinating, really. Can I ask you just to go back to my list here? Because I'm on question 2.
I should have warned you. I sometimes derail.
Yeah, no, it's great. I really prefer the conversations here that are one developer to another. They turn out to be the most interesting ones. You're known for being a big personality and a natural promoter, and you're also able to get stuff done and deliver. To do all this, what strengths have you had to personally bring to the business?
I think one of the things that is highly undervalued is a sense of humor and the resiliency skills, right? I didn't appreciate until maybe 2 or 3 years ago how much my stand-up comedy and my professional development skills were such an asset to me as as one of the co-founders of this company. We've gone through some dark times. We started the company with the flying by the seat of our pants because neither of us had really been in any sort of production or management stream in a game studio. Like Blair was always a software engineer, and I'd done high-level administration before, but nothing to the point of actually being responsible for budgeting, for production timelines and things like that. So having the resiliency to be okay with not knowing, admit when you don't know something so that you can go and find out, and developing the sense of listening to your intuition. Because I think what happens to a lot of new game devs is that they'll believe somebody who's supposedly an expert. And so I'm going to just like derail us a little bit to share that I had hired, I had hired a marketing expert, and I thought that, somebody who would have the chutzpah to call themselves a marketing expert would deliver on what they said they were going to deliver. And it turned out that this person could not deliver at the level that I was expecting. And by that, I mean spelling our name correctly, Charlene's name correctly, and my game's name correctly. Those are just basics, right? So it was not a personality fit. So we parted ways, and I was shocked to get a bill for work that had not actually been proven to have been done. And then what followed was an extortion attempt. So,
Wow.
I felt internal shame that, oh my God, like, did I do something wrong? If this person's an expert, that must mean that I'm somehow deficient in some way. And it really put me into a shame spiral. And I think my concern is for devs that are starting up their own studios is that there are going to be a lot more predatory people out there as the indie scene expands. So you have the consultants that overpromise, underdeliver, the consultants that you to pay up front first and then don't deliver at all. And then there are the consultants who deliver, but it's such low quality. So all of those things is, I would say, build your network, talk to people, find your barn raisers. You know, your barn raisers don't have to be about money. It can be about emotional support, and find who the trusted people are, people who do deliver. Because, you know, when this all happened 3 years ago, I was wrecked. And I thought, is this the end of our company? They were, you know, saying they were going to blacklist us in Canada. And we hadn't even done anything. All I asked her to do was like spell our names correctly. And I've heard that she's continued to do this to other people. So I want people to trust their intuition and to have the resiliency when things go to shit, to get back up and understand that they are not alone. And the more people that I talk to in indie game dev, the more I realize nothing that we have been through, whether it be the blackmail, the extortion, the sabotage, the challenges with licensed IP, we're not pioneers. It's all been, other people have had those experiences before. So I think that's a really valuable piece of it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think resilience is if I were being interviewed, that would be, you know, the question, any advice to indies, I would say resilience is the one thing that you need the most. Stick at making your game, stick at learning the industry, learning the business. Just keep going in whatever way you can, and then sooner or later your break will come somehow, you know.
Yeah. I'm sure that there were times where our barn raisers thought in the back of their head, because some of them did say, maybe it's time that you guys get jobs. Right. And I was like, no lie. We were interviewing for jobs at the beginning of this year. That's when, you know, there was that funding gap. I was like, we're out of money. We got to go do the thing. And it's now, I've also had the privilege of mentoring over 30 game devs just this past year alone. And the one thing that I've said to all of them is keep your day job. I love you. I want you to succeed. I want you to thrive. I need you to understand if this is a very competitive industry. And if you keep your day job, you will have one less thing to worry about, which is how are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to feed yourself? Because I'm telling you, it was no fun this year scrambling for that, because it puts your body into a state of panic. You can't create, right? In order to create, you have to have some stability. And we're still in the wild west of the indie game scene, right? You think about all of those waiters out in Los Angeles that are hoping for their big break. I think you can draw some real parallels there to the indie game scene, right? You have a lot of people waiting for their big break. What they need to understand is most of us are either doing work for hire to fund our own IP, or we have full-time jobs to fund our own IP. So there are very few people that are able to actually do this full-time. And that's the thing I really want us to talk about on social media, especially in game dev Twitter, because we just have by the droves, thousands of kids every year come out of high school and they're like, I want to make games. I'm like, great. Are you making games for art, for money, or a little bit of both? Because your approach to creating games is going to be radically different depending on the path that you choose.
Yeah, thank you. God, I mean, you brought back so many memories. Struggling to have enough money to finish a game, having to work for hire to support the game that you really want to do, or spending time, you know, trying to get a publisher, going on the road trying to get a publisher, or investors, and then in a whole new world of prospectus and, you know, return on investment, having to understand all that language, and new bunch of stakeholders to understand. But it's just, you know, when you get the creative success, or even if it's financial success or creative success, both, it's still worth it. Can you say a little bit about one more story?
Sure.
Really well.
Our focus has been to create strong narrative games. So in fact, if you go to bookmeetsgame.com, it will redirect to our website, because that in a nutshell is what we're trying to create personally, is a hybrid between compelling stories and an interactive world. I have been asked so many times by screenwriters who are just fascinated by the idea that software exists that would allow them to take short scripts and turn them into interactive games. We once had this woman approach us who was doing a documentary on Japanese internment camps. And she said, "Can I make a companion game?" And I said, "Let's not call it a game." Right? We can call it interactive storytelling, and it can be a companion piece. There was a gentleman that wanted to create a game about his experience surviving the London Blitz. So like, I'm incredibly passionate about creating an opportunity for people who have fascinating life stories, let alone the fiction, to be able to upload their own pictures and create living, breathing worlds out of their stories is just remarkable to me.
Yeah, well, it's an opportunity just there.
I have a story in the back of my mind that I've been wanting to make for the last, well over 3 years. And it's on the back burner. I've got to finish Charlene's game first. But, I think the one thing that connects us all, because we've been talking about storytelling since we could sit around the fire, right? You look at cave paintings, that is storytelling. We are storytellers. That defines us from everyone else and from every other species. And this is the medium. And I want to see us use that medium responsibly and have a legacy. So OMSG is very much focused on hopefully being good stewards, to be positive leaders in the game space, to not necessarily focus on serious games, but to have deeper conversations about the kinds of content that we can create. And and we have some like wild and bold, audacious plans for the next couple of years. You know what? We usually hit our goals, but they just might take us a little bit longer. By the way, I just wanted to say, I didn't even know that you could approach publishers for money. That's how little that I knew for such a long time. And I was like, okay. So there were a lot of things.
Often the only thing they're good for.
Well, I've learned so much, and I've also I've also befriended other devs that have taken money from publishers and it has gone terribly wrong. I've had friends that have taken money from publishers and it's gone very right. So every single experience as a dev is going to be a wide spectrum of positive to negative. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, if you had asked me 6 years ago, was I willing to go through that emotional pain to reach this? I probably would have said, let's take a different approach. I would have kept my day job. I would have kept my consulting work and maybe not been so financially under the gun for so long.
I'm with you right there. All the way. Absolutely. I mean, can you say a little bit about what the bold plans are? I mean, it's not a question that's on my list, but I'd be very interested to hear.
The bold plans really do focus on the work that we want to do in the ed tech sector. So one of the things that's really interesting is people have been throwing lots and lots of money at STEM. That's all we've been hearing about. STEM. I'm like, that's great. STEM is fantastic. But what happens if you revamp your curriculum and you focus on coding? What you're losing then are kids with communication and language skills. So I think one of the reasons why educators are particularly excited about what we do is because we're integrating STEAM. So we have artistic expression, we have logic and communication and all of those things. But my favorite is STREAM, which is the integration of reading and writing. And so by creating these book meets game experiences, like we have a short half-hour game called Hard Vacuum Lullaby, and it won Game of the Year, second place in 2016. It's a game with all female protagonists, and I love showing it at libraries to little boys and girls, and to watch a little boy, and they often say that boys at that age are very reluctant readers, to watch him play the game, not look up once to ask for help. to read through the whole thing and get to the end, I was like, oh, that felt so good. And so I want to do more of that. I want to finish out the curriculum so that we have curriculum for grades 4, 6, 8, 12. We already have this in colleges. There are small college classes that are using story stylists. I want to see it rolled out more. And we've had interest from like entire countries, which is super exciting. But we need to raise the money to be able to do the revamp on the engine. We need to have formalized curriculum, and I need a sales team, right? So I love how when people go to our website, they're like, wow, they must be rolling in it. They got a nice website. I'm like, a nice website's not as much as you think it is, right? Like you can have a shiny looking website and have no substance. That's not us. We have substance, but it really is two very driven and focused people trying to push this out to sea. And thankfully we have the help of our barn raisers.
It just sounds like such a good project. I mean, my sort of imagination is fired with the amount of stories that you could put in and the amount of uses that there are for it. So I really wish you all the best with that.
Thank you.
I mean, are there any grants available to you for that? I think it was.
Yes, there are. We're very fortunate in Canada that we have a number of grants and tax rebates. So on an annual basis, we've been able to tap into what's called SHRED, Scientific Research and Experimental Development Grant. And I'm grateful for that. That only applies for the technical development. So that's why Blair gets paid. I don't get paid because I can actually claim some of his salary back. We have other grants that are repayable grants. I kind of like the free grants versus the repayable ones. And
yeah, it's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, one thing that I often say to people is like, listen, if you want to make tons and tons of money on games, there's a secret. It's been proven. Go find a very popular game, clone it, put it out there, monetize the ads, right? But when you were a kid playing games, thinking they were the most amazing thing ever, did you grow up going, I want to clone games? No, or you didn't grow up going, I want to make gambling games. But those are surefire ways to get money. Like I said, I'm looking for $2 million to take our platform to the next level because I really think that user-generated content is the future of games. We're already seeing like that shift has been happening for the last 2 years. We saw it 6 years ago, and it's just we didn't have the resources to really catch up to where we need to be right now. And the other piece of it is we've been very, very careful who we wanted to align ourselves with, because you can find $2 million. It is not hard to find. You can hustle, connect with your network, use other people's barn raisers, but for us, it's about finding the right partner that understands the vision that we have for the games industry and why literacy is important, and to make sure that they're philosophically aligned as we are with leaving a positive legacy.
I may have a good contact for you, actually. After, perhaps at the end of the interview, I can exchange that, give that to you.
Thanks, Simon.
Welcome. So on the money side of things, you have a particular skill set in being able to raise funds and communicate your ideas very well. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of how you managed to raise the 500,000 Canadian?
Yes, absolutely. All right. So in the beginning,
give us the kind of step-by-step.
Yes. So once upon a time, when we first got started, we were willing to take a 6-month lease on an office, right? Because a 6-month lease was not a lot of money. We got some students that came in from our local college to be programmers. We all were not getting paid. So it was all an understanding and an agreement that if we hit it rich, they would get their IOU. And we cashed in some of our retirement fund to be able to make sure that we could support ourselves by paying rent. And we also got an equipment lease. So that, was reasonable. We took on about $15,000 worth of debt to get the initial computers for 6 stations, et cetera, and those programmers. Shortly after we sort of put our feet in the water and got going, we were contacted by somebody who, her father had just passed. She had a little bit of money, and she said, hey, you look like you're doing something neat. can I invest? And so she was actually our first friend investor. And that was like, wow, that's kind of cool. And later that year, a couple of months later, we were supposed to have access to a line of credit from a family member, which was at the very last minute yanked from us. And, you know, what do you do? So we created a friends and family letter. So for those of you unfamiliar, it really should be a microcosm of a business plan. So we talked a little bit about the opportunity, so the vision, the opportunity, the timeline, where we thought the games industry was going, and why this was so important to be able to create something like Story Stylus. And we made the ask, and the initial ask was $5,000, which, you know, it's, I guess depending on where you are in your career, $5,000's not a lot of money if you have it in the bank, right? For a lot of people, they struggle on the day-to-day side. So in that first week, gosh, I think $60,000 rolled in that first week. And I had, you know, those fundraising boards that you've seen, you know, it's like, oh, and it's like that thermometer.
Thermometer, yeah.
Yeah. So we did one in the office, and our team at the time, which were all these students, and I said, listen, I'm going to raise $100,000 by the end of the month. And they looked at me and they're like, yeah, right. Because they'd never seen anything like that. And so I had this chart, and every single day it just went up and up and up. And so I raised over $100,000 in that first month just from our friends.
Fantastic.
And so they each got a bonus.
What did you put in the letter? Was it like a sort of like a Kickstarter? Plus they'd get some rewards, you know?
No rewards. It's like, here's equity in our company. We are willing to part with the equity in our company. And, you know, we cannot guarantee that this is going to be successful. But you're going to have equity in the company. Here's what we want to do. Here's why it's important. And here's who we are. So at the time, Blair and I had been together for 17 years. So between the two of us, he already had 10 plus years of experience in game dev with 15 years as a software engineer. And I had the hustle, right? So you got the hacker, the hustler, a really good combination, instills confidence in the people. And yeah, we did an open house in our small community, and we invited people that we had sort of assessed as our barn raisers to come in. And they came in and they were like, take my money. So, and they actually got to see the demo. Like all the people who responded by email, they never even saw a demo. They did not see a demo of what we'd created. They were just, I think because we had already built up that social goodwill, these people knew who we were. So the majority of our barn raisers have been in our life prior to investing for more than 10 years, right? They know us. They know that we're not going anywhere, that we have a stable relationship, that we're capable of pulling this off, right? Proven track record without having done it before. So that was the beginning of it. And so we hit 100,000, and I gave each of the students $1,000, which is, you know, not what they would have been paid if they had been paid to actually work for the term. But what's remarkable about that is each of those students came back from multiple unpaid work terms because they got so much out of working with us, which I think is a testament to who we are as people, but also the level of experience that they were getting from working with us. So we have unpaid labor. And I know a lot of people have very strong opinions about unpaid labor. I have opinions too, and nobody was getting paid, and we were all in it together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
myself for people,
you know, I still have a list of everybody that will get paid one day. Some people are at the very bottom of the list. Yeah. And then just over the years, it's accumulated from 100 to, gosh, 170 by the end of the first year. And then it just grew and grew and grew to the point where last year, the minimum buy-in was 20,000. Because what happens is, you know, we were working on Charlene's project. My minimum output, and that was like 10 grand a month, right? I had my artist, and then I had to play Blair, and then I had my, you know, company expenditures. Well, two other people, myself included, were not getting paid. So if I really had the runway that I needed, I would have had a lot more money, but I didn't have it. So we had to do the best that we could with the resources that we had. That's just game dev. I've had some people say, you should just walk away from the project. I'm like, nope, not going to do it. Thanks for your advice, but that's not me. I've had so many doubters over the years that I'm just making a list of all of the mean things that they say, so that there'll be chapter headings in my book.
Yeah, I mean, I was told once that I was a loser, that I was never going to manage it, that I was a fantasist, that it was pie in the sky, and I bought the license that I was after, for $50,000, and they said, it's just going to cost you money. And then I sold that license to a Canadian company, actually. Do you know Hip Interactive? I think they're gone now, but I sold it to them for $350,000. So I proved it to myself anyway,
Yes. I had somebody in August of 2014 tell me, I think it was April 2014, tell me there was no point in my coming to pitch to their angel group because they doubted that I would be solvent by August.
Charming.
I've been around for 5 years. I'd love to know if the people that they've invested in have continued to last that long. I get that most businesses fail, that 90% of people will fail in business. And by all means, we should have failed multiple times by now. But I will tell you, even when there has been nearly nothing in the bank account, more money comes from the sky. I will get on a plane. See, this is the other thing. So here's a tip for indies. You have to talk to people. I will never go anywhere without a business card in my pocket. I've been in hotels, gone to the complimentary lounge, and struck up a conversation with somebody, and they'll be so fascinated by what we do. And they'll be like, do you have a card? I'm like, I didn't bring a card. So now I bring my cards with me when I even go breakfast or for appetizers. And I've been on a plane multiple times, chatting it up with my seatmate, and they'll get off the plane going, right, where can I write a check to invest? So you need to be fearless in loving what you do, being willing to talk about it unashamedly, and saying, yeah, I would love your help. Or do you know somebody that might be able to connect me? It's the thing that I've been telling all of my mentees this year is the work that you do to seed the ground, you will eventually get to harvest, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road. It's about building your community, building your network, helping other people. And that all comes back to you tenfold. And that's how you build a community of barn raisers that are really, you can tell barn raisers is my favorite thing ever. But this whole idea that we're all in this together. Like my success as an indie game dev means other people will get to succeed as well. I'll be able to hire more game devs. I love promoting other game devs. I don't know why people are stingy with the promotion of other people's work. You can only produce so many games per year. If you're only making 1 game a year, promote other people's games. Your players will be very happy that you've done that because they have to wait an entire year before your game comes around. It's a rising tide lifts all boats.
That's right. And who said that to me first was Ed Dilly of Fog Studios. I don't know if you know him.
No.
It's like 30 years as an agent for game studios. He said that to me, and actually it's my experience for the last 20 years. This is one of the most friendly and supportive industries around. Actually, I haven't found it to be competitive at all. It's more supportive and collaborative.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have
you
not.
Need a tech solution, or you need a contact. They're always like really forthcoming.
Very much so, and I think that one of the underutilized tools is Twitter. It's been remarkable how much my Twitter presence has grown, but also my Twitter community has grown in just the last 2 years. I've been fortunate to be asked to speak in Australia, New Zealand, Poland, Germany, and that's just in the last 12 months. I have fallen in love with the Australian game dev community. They are, Australia and New Zealand, they've got it. They've got the right secret. And I don't even think it's a secret. They promote each other's work, they champion each other, and they know that everybody will benefit if you share content, right? It's a beautiful community. I love their conference, GCAP. If you get a chance to go, skip GDC, go to GCAP. It's beautiful. It's in Melbourne in October. So
I'd like to actually. Steph Ben Dixon did some of the interviews for us, on the last summit, and our summit was quite popular in Australia. I'm glad you're speaking, actually, because I'm sure they'll enjoy this.
Well, I've shared the 5-year studio journey, which that literally was the name of my talk, but I'm actually I'm going to rebrand it so that people know exactly what they're getting into. I'm thinking this might be a little too cheeky, but when it all goes to shit, survival, resiliency, and joy in game dev. So that's like the cheeky title of it. Yeah. And, but really, you need to be willing to survive, to thrive, to be resilient, and to find the joy. Like if you're in game dev for the wrong reasons, it will show up and it will be such a slog. The really interesting and cool thing about this year, to sort of be personal. So I lost my dad this year. He was diagnosed with cancer at the end of January.
Sorry,
2 weeks later, thank you. So 2 weeks later, my landlord was like, hey, I've got to convert my house back to personal use. So you get in the boot. And so I had all of this stuff going on, incredibly stressed, no money. And my dad was dying. So I turned to game dev Twitter and I said, listen, you all know me as a game dev, but I am a professional certified life coach and professional speaker for the last 10, 15 years in those two fields. If you would like coaching or mentorship around these areas, here's my PayPal account. Let's get some time booked in. And I woke up the next morning and $1,500 was in my PayPal account. And what that sort of kicked off in a light bulb in my head is I have good people in game dev, not just the people in my own personal life, but there are a lot of people in game dev that know that they don't know everything, and that having a mentor or a coach guiding them through either the career trajectory stuff or their business or their game dev, game design documents, that's a valuable thing. And so now I'm getting to bring the stand-up comedy, the life coaching, and the game dev all into one place. And it's really inspired me on top of everything else that I want to do. So I've got, one more story games that I want to work on. I've decided that in 2020, I'm going to be launching an online web personals. Let me better describe that. An online series of videos where it's personal development, professional development, and game dev. Because where is the game dev life coach out there, right? It's such especially when you have all these young people that don't necessarily know the ins and outs. They don't have the life experience to be able to bounce back from rejection. I might as well take all that awesome experience and make it available for everyone.
Yeah, agreed. I hope that's what we're doing today. Wonderful. Can I just ask one more question on the funding side of things for the 500?
Oh yes.
Did you go like through LinkedIn, or was it your personal contacts and friends and family?
It was just my personal contacts. So I made a list of people that I had meaningful relationships with. And then, you go through the list and you have your core people, and then you go further down the list and go, okay, so because there are very strict rules, you can't just go out there and announce because of securities rules and things like that. You can't just go say, hey, I'm looking for investors, right? So you have to contact them and say, we're doing a round of fundraising. If this is something you'd like to know more about, let me know. Then you can pitch it to them. You actually cannot pitch it in an open house setting. There are rules about that. And every time I would I use Facebook as a very enclosed space of the people that listen. If you're on my Facebook list, I would probably bury a body for you. So that's a very small list of people. And so every once in a while I would say, I'm really grateful for our investors who believe in us. And invariably somebody would turn around and say, I'd love to invest. Right? So we weren't approaching them, they were approaching us. And it's just,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm very grateful.
Yeah, that's a great, what a great way of doing it as well, I'm really impressed with that, because $100,000 in a month is amazing.
Is it? You know what? I don't have any, I can't think of too many indie devs that have done that from friends. And I will tell you, we had a Kickstarter that failed.
Yeah. I mean, it's easily done, isn't it?
It's easily done.
What went wrong there? I mean, there are a lot of that, if you don't mind.
No, I know. Hey, listen, I'm happy. I will talk for hours and hours. It's a great way for me to procrastinate from my other things.
It's just that, a lot of people who watch this, they're thinking of doing their own Kickstarter. All have very success or not.
So the thing that I want to say about Kickstarters is the fail rate is very high. So if you can accept that your first Kickstarter may fail, then you've got the right mindset. Now, if you know that it's going to fail, what are the things that are going to help it succeed? So if you do a search for Jean Leggett and Kickstarter, you'll probably find the things that I've written on LinkedIn and some other updates on the internet, right? It's, for us, I think the phrase clarity equals cash and consistency equals cash. So you need to be consistent about what it is that you're creating, and you need to be very, very clear. If I look at content that I created 10 to 15 years ago, wow, I didn't know how to be concise with the thing that I was trying to communicate. I now know how to have the precision of language. Obviously not when I'm chatting with you, because I could just go on and on, but I've learned from written marketing perspective how to get to the point, right? So get to the point, be very clear, have the number of game devs that I talk to that don't have game design plans, and they're just like, they're all working up in their head. I'm like, get it on paper, be very clear, cut the fat. Our biggest challenge, I think,
and just as important, which I find missing all the time, I get incredibly surprised, is a milestone timetable.
Right? You need goals, you need milestones. And the biggest thing for us, I think, is we were trying to create a Kickstarter that was for both the creators and the players. I think that if we had just focused on, hi, we're building this game engine, it's specifically for people who love narrative-based games, we would love to have your support in funding us to take this engine to the next level, right? Because at that point we would have created there would have been a solid prototype already. But what we were trying to do was reward people who might like to play. It just got very confusing. And I will say, so this is why your network is super important. The previous year, so in the fall of 2014, I did this epic trip, as I am kind of known for doing. And I went to Seattle and Los Angeles and Vancouver and Victoria and Toronto and Calgary. And I talked to game devs and screenwriters and authors. And nobody in game dev Twitter that were men would really talk to me. Even I find male journalists won't really talk to me, because I'm writing a game about a woman, and I'm a woman leading a company that has a feminist ethos. What I did do is I connected to other prominent women in games, and they were more than willing to give me their time. As a result of having those really connected conversations, they then put us in touch with other people, because they were willing to use their social capital to connect us to other people. And one of the people that gave us a support video for Kickstarter was Chris Jones, AKA the creator of the Tex Murphy series. And I am a huge Tex Murphy nerd. I have played all of his games. That I'm a point and click adventure girl. So, out of the last 6 years, that's been one of the real major highlights for me, was being able to have this 45-minute chat with this guy who story stylists could make Tex Murphy games. And it was just really cool. And, you know, you can have celebrity endorsement. That doesn't mean your crowdfunding is going to go well. It's timing, it's the messaging, and it's the willingness to hustle and ask for the money. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but you can succeed at it, just not me.
Right. Do you think, I mean, it sounds to me like you might be in the right place to do another one now.
Yeah. I think that might be the case. Certainly people are more interested in game creation. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly what is the bare minimum that we need, but I'm challenging myself to move away from the concept of bare minimum. Because I think when we start from a place of what's the least that I need to be able to succeed at this, is we shortchange ourselves. So I'd like to move into what's the big vision of OMSG 2.0, right? And working my way backwards from that. So I don't know if I could raise 2 million to build this. I could probably raise a couple $100,000. But even then, I don't know, is there enough of a demand on the consumer side for creators? Because I hear a lot of people are using free tools. I'm like, listen, I think free tools are fantastic, but I would like to monetize our platform, and I would like creators to monetize their content. And I want us to all treat artists and creatives with respect by feeding them with our dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think that like good content is worth paying for.
Yeah, I think you would enjoy one of our games. It's called Danielle's Inferno.
Right,
and
that sounds great.
It's a little
I get the pun.
Oh, I'm glad. It is Monty Python meets Dante.
Great. I'll have to write that down.
Yes. And it was priced at $6.66 Canadian. Because I'm like, you're going to hell. Which I thought was like really clever, but I was told afterwards that people didn't think it would be a good game because it was priced so low. And I'm like, it's a 2.5-hour game. It won #1 PC game of the year, tied for #1 in the year that it came out in Canada. You know, people have cried too. I've watched streamers cry at the end of the game, which is like so fulfilling. It's a good game, but we missed our audience. Like we couldn't connect with our audience. So I'm hoping that it will be rediscovered when Charlene's game comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Often you get that when you release your next game, you get more interest in your first game.
Yeah.
Some games have taken, searching for an example, some games have taken years to catch on, and then when they do, people go crazy for them.
Knock wood.
So, I mean, you've spoken a lot about turning every situation into an opportunity.
That's my superpower.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've built awareness, you've built a brand, and you've built followers. How exactly have you done that? What's been the process for that?
Well, I'm mindful and I'm intentional about what it is that I want to put out into the world. For me, it is being authentic and being in integrity. I very much like to focus on gratitude. I am honest when I say I'm not feeling the gratitude today. And I try to keep my bitterness and garbage off of social media, because I think that's one of the things that people struggle with, they've come up in a time when all they know is social media and they use that as their personal diary, right? I look at social media as a communication tool. And so, I don't know, I've somehow gotten this reputation or moniker of being like game dev mom. I'm not even a mom, but I have like that persona of this mom, that the good kind of mom that wants to, you know, love on you and support you and cheer you on and yay, you know, maybe cool aunt. I'm cool with that. So that's a really big piece of it. The other thing that I've been telling my mentees that they want to be known is being consistent. right? Whether you're an artist, whether you want to be a narrative designer or a producer, is show up and be consistent as the person that you want people to see you as, right? For me, I would like and hope that people see me as a leader. And so as a result, there are things that I can and cannot do on my social media. I wouldn't dunk on people. I wouldn't be a human trash fire, because those are not consistent with leadership or legacy. And I like to think that I promote other people's voices that are doing similar things, right? That those voices deserve to be heard because they're underserved and underrepresented in our industry. So I'm very, very mindful of that. And I think, so it's the mindfulness and the consistency thing, and just showing up and getting it done. You know, no matter what, you're homeless is a hashtag for it. There were people that were shocked. And, you know, when I write the book, and I don't think I'm going to write the book this year, but I think the online courses that I'm developing are going to form the book.
I think you should call the book The Hacker and the Hustler.
You know what? Okay. I like that. And maybe at the tagline would be survival, resilience, and joy in game dev.
Yeah, yes, which is your talk, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there are things that I've never shared with my Facebook community, like my close friends know, but we had a relationship hiccup in our first year of our studio, and our marriage nearly went off the rails as a result of it. And I talk about that in my keynotes that I give, but I never allow my keynote to be recorded because nobody wants to talk about infidelity. And I'm sharing this with you because it's not a secret anymore, right? There are hundreds of people, thousands of people that have heard me give that talk. We need to talk about how indie game dev impacts our relationships with people. We need to talk about the very real thing that happens in marriages and in boyfriend, girlfriend, and power dynamics, and, you know, the Me Too movement that's rippling through our industry. If we don't have those conversations, people think that they're alone. And so I've shared that. And just in New Zealand last month, this woman came up to me. She's an older woman. And she said, I really appreciate that you talked about the infidelity because that happened to me too. And I also chose to stay. Right? It's Blair and I have gone through so much in the last 23 years. There is now nothing that would tear us apart. So I get really annoyed when I hear that investors don't like investing in a husband and wife team. I'm like, listen, if you're going to put your money on people, you're going to want to put it on us, because there is nothing stopping us from getting where we want to be now.
Yeah,
we've been through it all. We've been through it all, and we've survived it all, and we still have a sense of humor about it.
Yeah, and you know what? They can say that sort of thing. The investors can say that sort of thing about anything. They're just looking really for an excuse not to invest.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A husband and wife team can be successful or unsuccessful, you know.
Did you know that only 3% of women get funding?
Well, it's not enough.
Imagine what game dev would look like if we had 50-50, or even heck 20-80. Like, just give us something, give us a bone.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. And you know what? There are more dollars available, trillions of dollars available in the world. You know, companies like Apple and Google sitting on piles of cash that they could never spend the interest on.
No, rather than give one studio $100 million to develop a property, why not split that up into a massive fund, right? Here's my big 10-year vision. Are you ready for this, Simon?
Yeah, I'm ready. It's sounding,
okay.
You're aligning with me here. I can start.
Okay. I, in 10 years, would love, if it is possible, and I'm putting the plan in motion, but in 10 years, I would love to be the known as the video game philanthropist. I would love to, you know, facilitate incubators and training and artistic merit. I want to put STEAM programs into schools, not to serve my own ego, but because I believe that this integrated learning, this excitement for agency over communicating our stories and our ideas, that's the thing that turns people on. And wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, I mean, I maybe we should talk some more about this offline, because I have that idea I want to call it the No Strings Fund.
See, we're just.
Yeah, I get it, and but I want to start it next year.
Hey, listen, I've got some time.
Great. Okay, we'll definitely talk more about that. Thank you.
I would love that.
How long have you got to spend, Jean?
You know what? Another 15 minutes, I would be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Would you give me 30 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I just need to cancel something.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks. So, yeah. So, can you tell us a bit about how you monetize and market your games?
Not very well. I'm not gonna lie. We have done a not stellar job of marketing and monetizing our games to date, and there's a strategic reason for that. So when we were building our games, our first game was to make sure, hey, can Story Stylist create the kind of games that we want it to create? And so we've been creating primarily content that is either free or promotional giveaways to be able to show what this engine is capable of. While Danielle's Inferno is priced at $6.66 to, go to hell for a good time, we haven't seen a lot of strong sales. Even when we won the Game of the Year award, we didn't see an uptick in sales that was significant. The Charlaine Harris project, however, is our first, what I would say our first real premium product is. And Charlaine's previously had a game. It did very well. It had a 10% conversion rate at a substantial amount of downloads. And heck, if we had 1% of the downloads that she had in 11 years ago, then we would be laughing all the way to the bank. And it's, what we're trying to do is focus on our core users. So if we want to talk about the marketing strategy, one of the things that I notice, and we didn't know this, to be honest, in the first 3 years that we were doing this, but we've gotten very clear, crystal on who it is our target user is. So for me, my target player is a woman over 40 who enjoys reading, probably reads mystery or supernatural stuff, and also is familiar with casual games, ideally point and click, but hey, if she's playing Facebook games, that's fine too. So has an understanding of how games work.
You mean like, would you include hidden object games in that?
Yeah, those are my least favorite kind of games. And I play a lot of match 3 games. So I know a lot of people have very strong feelings about match 3, but at the end of the day, I don't want to be anywhere near a game that requires my brain, right? I just want to turn off my brain and slowly fade out into the night. There's too much going up there. So I have a very clear vision of who it is that I want to make games for. Not to say other people can't enjoy them. And so when we made the decision 3-4 years ago, oh my gosh, 5 years ago, time flies. Oh my God. So 5 years ago is when we first approached Charlaine Harris, and because I knew that her target, like her audience is our target customer, right? She has a very strong base of women who read her content. And her stuff is on NBC and HBO and the Hallmark Channel. Here's a woman with a huge user base, and she sold over 36 million novels. she's done very well for herself. And we were fortunate to be able to get the license to the IP and to be able to tap into that. So one of the reasons why I want to be very mindful about creating this IP is I don't want to F it up, right? This is not, could the game flop? Yeah, the game could flop. I don't think it will. We've had people, so there's a 1 hour demo that people can go and play. The game will be probably closer to 8 hours by the time that it's finished. It's a very mature Nancy Drew style game. And it was designed specifically for people who love point and click adventures, but who also love reading. So everything that I do these days is very intentional about the long-term payoff. So bringing Lonnie Minella on board, she was the voice of the Nancy Drew series for Her Interactive. She did 17 games as Nancy Drew. She is voicing currently one of the characters, but maybe doing more characters. The woman who read the audiobooks and is the voice of Lily Bard is the voice of Lily Bard in our game. So if you were an Audible book listener, you get to have her be in your head again. So everything is about that long-term strategy for us. And as for marketing, it's this year with the domestic displacement, the domestic displacement and the family illness, I haven't had a chance to really do the proper marketing. But one of the things that I found was really effective was doing weekly developer chats with our audience. Even if there's only 8 people watching, they loved being able to connect with us. And then they fell in love with us as developers and were willing to go that extra mile to share how much they loved what it is that we were doing. And they become your bar raisers because they're just, yeah, I think it's easy for people to fall in love with us because we just show up, we're joyful, and we try to have a fun time.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I've really enjoyed speaking with you this afternoon, actually.
Thank you.
And do you think that you'll have a dedicated professional marketing partner for this endeavor? Sounds like you've got sitting on a real opportunity here.
That all depends on the timing of this project, right? I know we have some money coming in. Is it enough to pay for property marketing? You know, I spent 25% of my budget of this game on marketing in 1 quarter, and it yielded me 0 media interest. And I have to say, it made me a very bitter, angry person about marketing because I had hired these professionals, 2 separate professionals, and nothing really came of it. And what I found as an indie dev is there was something to be said for the indie dev that goes out and reaches out to people themselves. So I've nearly been on an international television show as like the highlighted product. It was heartbreaking when they went with another dev team. Like I'll tell you about it afterwards. Like that was my core audience is their audience. I'm like, it would have been the equivalent of like $8 million in advertising.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking. We've had a lot of interest from mainstream press. We've been in PC Gamer. It'll come. And yeah, I think maybe some people see me as foolishly optimistic, but I would rather be foolishly optimistic and keep working towards my goals than be a pessimist that just gives up. So it's, yeah, there was something else that I wanted to add, and shoot, you know, when it pops out of your head.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the things that I think indie devs forget to do is they forget to check out who's adjacent to them. So I have actually Google Alerts set up for certain key phrases. And oftentimes, maybe 3 times a day, I'll get emails on the various words or the various phrases. And then I will check those articles and see is there anything relevant there? Is there anything relevant that I can turn around and contact that journalist and say, hey, I noticed that you covered this game. We're doing something in a similar space, but on a different bent. Is this something that you might be interested in talking to me about? And I have actually gotten quite a few podcasts and newsprint articles and online articles out of doing that as a strategy. So there are a lot of great ways that people can market themselves.
Yeah, no, that's really clever. Absolutely. I was speaking to someone last week, a developer, and they said that they built a relationship with the influencer or the streamer before sending them the game, and that led to them being taken more favourably and their game being featured because they hadn't just contacted them because of their game, you know, they actually built an authentic relationship with them.
Yeah. It's really, honestly, truly, a lot of it has to do with the relationship building and this idea that you're seeding the future, right? You've got to plant those seeds, you've got to take care of those seeds, and then you have to harvest. And we've been, when we got into this 6 years ago, did not think it was going to take this long, but here we are. We knew that this was for the long term, that this was going to be probably a 10-year thing before it really paid off. And just for those of you listening that are in their new part of their journey, everybody says, oh, overnight success, ta-da. Uber, Airbnb are prime examples. They did not hit their stride until year 7. So they had been working on minimal capital and they just kept working and working and working. And now they're household names. So it is, a lot of it is knowing when to cut your losses, knowing how to be resilient, knowing how to turn survival into thriving. Survive or thrive. I would rather thrive. And a lot of it has to do with who you surround yourself with and the decisions that you make to be resilient.
Yeah, I agree, and learn from the mistakes. You know,
and don't shame yourself for them.
You know, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's really important because that sort of gives you the strength to get back up and look people in the eye again. If you haven't shamed yourself.
Everybody makes mistakes. Just get over it, learn from it, move on.
Absolutely. There are, you know, particularly like I had to learn the hard way when it came to royalties. You know, I did a great game. I got some royalties, but it wasn't quite enough. I did another game, and then we were late on the game, so we had our royalties cut. A couple where I didn't get the royalties that I was supposed to get. I got a couple that didn't sell very well, so I didn't get any royalties. And then it wasn't until like the 8th title that I actually received, you know, a proper royalty check. You know, that
wow,
was like free money.
I want, you know, these are the kinds of things that devs need to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
I know somebody that has been slaving away on their own game for 4 years, and it's an adorable game. And I try to share it because they're still working on it. And this is like a one-man team. And man, that's dedication.
What's the game?
It's called Pertato.
So
Pertato, yeah. And it's this really cute little, is it a platformer? Yeah, it's a platformer, and it's got cute cats that look like potatoes, and it's adorable. I love the art, and you know, the guy that's created it, he goes by Red Vonix on Twitter, and he's a really solid human being. And you know, he has worked a long time to get his game going. There's other things, but anyways, he's worked really hard. And then you have people like Jake Burkett who talk about, you know, pump out a game every 2 to 3 months and just keep going. Short and sweet, because for him, the more games that you have, the more people are going to go back to your back catalog. And writers use that same principle as well, right? You publish enough books.
Interviewing him, actually.
You publish enough books, people are going to start to reach into your back catalog. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I now tell people, you know, maybe you should consider that philosophy. I did not think that this game was going to be on our books for such a long period of time. Our game is not going to ship until next year because we now want to move on to Unity. And is that the end of the world? No. But if we had focused on making shorter games, we would have that much more content out there, and we would have more to show people. That was a choice that we made. I would do things differently in the future. And I try to tell other people that I'm working with, listen, keep it small, keep it manageable, because the larger that you scope is a bigger risk. And it's a bigger risk no matter what size of a studio you are. like the EAs and Ubisofts of the world, they can afford to take a couple of losses. They can afford to have a couple of stinkers because they have a huge war chest. But for a lot of triple I's, they cannot afford to make a mistake on a game that they've been working on for 3 years, right?
Absolutely.
Most studios are one game away from bankruptcy. And
been there many times.
We don't talk about that. We do not talk about that. And I don't think that the gamer community, especially the toxic side of it, I don't think they care, but I really don't think that they realize how much work it is for the people that lead that studio when they go to bed at night and they're talking about payroll instead of pillow talk, right? We don't have lives. Our lives are our studios, and we make a lot of sacrifices to be in this industry.
Yeah, we do. I've lost a lot of sleep over that, you know. You know, it only takes your publisher to delay one milestone, and you know, you've got 2 months of payroll to make.
Yeah, right. We took out credit card advances to pay our own rent so that I could use the cash in the company coffers to pay our employees. And because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You don't stiff your employees.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take contractors on unless I had the full chunk of their money sitting in my bank account. And it never occurred to me that there are people out there that would hire people without having the means to pay them. I've heard about so many people getting stiffed. And listen, I understand it from both sides of the coin. I get it. Sometimes you make commitments and then funding falls through. I had a third of our budget disappear overnight because commitments were made that weren't fulfilled.
Yeah.
It happens.
Difficult business, and hence why, you know, it's so important to give a bit back, I think, and to let new people know, you know, what the pitfalls are. We've spoken a lot about like resilience and learning, and you know, learning from your mistakes and marketing. If you had like, you know, maybe up to 3 things that you would say a developer must have, an indie developer must know. 3 pieces of advice or 3 lessons learned, or even 1.
That's a good question. I think in a nutshell, it would be to have the confidence to be consistent with your work. You could make the greatest game in the world, and if nobody knows it because you haven't spent the time to invest in community building, it's going to be a really great game that no one ever gets to play. So you need to put yourself out there. So community, you need to be consistent about what it is that you're sharing. You need to be vulnerable, to trust people, and people are going to break your heart. They're going to be people who break your heart. I've heard horror story after horror story, but you know what? The majority of people are so freaking good that those heartbreaks, the way I look at it, this person who extorted me, she only took us for $2,000. She's taken studios for like 20, 30 grand or more. And I'm like, it was a lesson. It taught me to listen to red flags. So every heartache that you have, it breaks your heart, but you get to put it together. And like, there's a Japanese art form, and I don't know how to pronounce it. I want to say it's kiyaki or something. And they fill in the cracks with gold. And then that broken vessel becomes more valuable. That's game dev in a nutshell. You're not just creators. You're not just creators, you're artists, you're business people. You know, you're all listening to the summit. You've made it to the end of this interview because you're interested in the business side of things. And that tells me that you've got some drive and some ambition. Stick to that. Find people who will be your champions. Reach out to devs and ask for help. Listen, some people might say no because they've got too much on their plate. People asked me for help this year while my dad was dying, and I said, listen, I don't have the bandwidth right now, come back. Right? But most game developers, they know what it took to get where they are, and they will take the time to talk to you. Yeah. Maybe not the super celebrity ones, but there are lots of non-super celebrity people out there that would love to be a mentor or just be a once in a while listening host.
Absolutely. It usually is only a bandwidth issue, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, even if I want to reach out to Peter Molyneux, I can, and I mean, Nicola contacted Hideo Kojima the other day.
Oh my.
we haven't heard yet, but we're trying.
You know what? It's that's another thing is ask. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? When I went up to
yeah,
I went up to Charlene Harris. Have you ever considered turning your books into games? Right? And often when I say it, I don't talk about how much we paid for the license, but let me just say it was very reasonable. And I think that game devs would be shocked to understand that a lot of the licenses for IP that they love, excluding like Star Wars sized IP, a lot of licenses are very attainable, and start having that conversation. I will tell you that I am a power user of LinkedIn. And here's where the ask. Okay, here's an embarrassing story about me. We were going out to Los Angeles for a screenwriters conference. And so I went to LinkedIn, I typed in Los Angeles, and I wanted to see if I had any first or second degree connections in Los Angeles that I should try and book meetings with, right? I'm not just gonna fly all the way to the other side of the continent without trying to line up some meetings. And I saw this guy, Dan Murray. I didn't know who Dan was. Maybe you know Dan. I see from your smile, you might know Dan.
It was he XTHQ.
I don't know if he was, but so Dan on his LinkedIn, Skybound Interactive. I'm like, I don't know what Skybound is. I'm not really, not sure. I just see that he's the president, and I also see he's ex-EA. So I thought, okay, that's something he has in common with Blair. And so I dropped him a line. I said, hey, we're Blair and Jean. We're from One More Story Games. We're going to be in Los Angeles. I see that you're really interested in storytelling games, and I was wondering if we could tell you about our platform. So Dan sets a meeting up with, his assistant, books us in. We rent a car. We get out to this sketchy looking building in Los Angeles and pull up. And I'm like, okay, am I going to die here? Like, what's the deal? And we walk into the reception area, wall-to-wall zombies.
Fantastic.
They are the license holder. So Robert Richmond, the guy that created The Walking Dead, created Skybound as a way to manage the licenses for his IP and also other people's IP. And there we were having a meeting with the president of the guy managing The Walking Dead. I had no idea. And I was like, he looked at me and he goes, you don't know who I am? And I'm like, I'm going to admit on the spot, I'm not going to bullshit you. I did not know. And I think if I knew, I would have been freaking out. So we have walked into life is too short to bullshit. And I think that's actually one of my pet peeves in business. I think men are willing to bullshit more than women are. Women are more likely to say, listen, we have these areas that we're working on for improvement, and men will hand wave. And I think that's where they get the funding from. It's not that we're visionaries. We are less risk averse, right? We're going to sell you on what we can deliver versus some crazy, fantastical idea. And we will deliver on what we say we're going to deliver. And so I wanted to be upfront with him. So anyways, we've stayed in touch over the years. I would love to eventually maybe work with Skybound. Who knows, maybe do some user-generated content. You never know. But there's no harm in asking. And a no is just a rejection that you flick off, because the sooner you can plow through no's, the sooner you'll get to a yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I asked the guys if I could license Peppa Pig, and I didn't have the money and I didn't have a publisher. And then when they said yes, to get the publisher and the money.
Well, I have to
and
tell
I did
you,
all
our
that
dream
just to get a dev deal,
That's wild. I know Blair's dream IP is Doctor Who.
Oh wow, I've done that twice. Yeah.
That is his dream IP. So maybe Simon, we'll have to have a conversation around that.
Yeah, why not? I did the DS and Wii version.
Wow.
I've got lots of
Well,
contacts there, you know.
I will keep my idea offline, but there's nothing wrong with having big aspirations and dreams, and make time specific plans and milestones for yourself professionally and personally. And at the end of the day, don't burn yourself out to make games, because on your deathbed, nobody's going to care how many titles you shipped.
No, that's brilliant. It's been absolutely brilliant today. How can people reach you if they'd like?
Well, thank you. I have so enjoyed this, Simon. They can find us on our website, which is bookmeetsgame.com, which redirects to onemorstorygames.com. They can find me on Twitter at Jean Leggett. That's 2 G's, 2 T's. And they can also find One More Story Games on Twitter as well with a numeral 1. And I hope to connect with you. I hope that you'll come and play some of our really cool games. If you love reading, you love games, maybe this will hit your sweet spot. I play the voice of Satan in the last level of Danielle's Inferno. And if you're interested in creating, check out our right tab at onemorstorygames.com, and it will take you over to Story Stylus. So I think you're going to start to see us make some really big movements and gestures in 2020.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Everyone's going to love this.